Human Experiment, Origins and Evolution of Humanity, written and edited by David Carmichael. Chapter 3, Part 2. The Principle of Parsimony. People bring interesting things into my office all the time. As an employee of a public university, I am readily accessible to the general public, and it has been my pleasure to view many interesting items over the years. People have asked me to examine fossilized bones, meteorites, a jade mask, a classic Mayan pottery, and a meter-long stone pestle from Mexico that the owner identified as a fossilized Neanderthal club. However, one of the most interesting items was the incredible alien ring discovered in the desert east of El Paso. A few years ago, a community member, whom I'll refer to as Bob, contacted me with an amazing story of discovery, one that he imagined would change the way humanity views our place in the universe. While hiking in the desert along the Carlsbad Highway at the edge of town, Bob discovered a ring, but he was convinced it was more than that, a remarkable artifact that provided proof of contact with extraterrestrial aliens. He asked if he and his father could bring the ring to my lab and examine it under one of our microscopes. I agreed, and we all viewed the ring and discussed their interpretation of the find. The ring itself was unimpressive. It had an adjustable band made of soft, pliable metal, and it contained a greenish plastic stone. It looked like a mood ring one might obtain from a gumball machine. It was definitely not a piece of fine jewelry. On the inside of the ring, we could see a series of small, more or less parallel scratches. To Bob, these looked like pictures of Phoenician cuneiform he had seen in the National Geographic, yet they were so small. How could humans create a cuneiform inscription so small that he would need a microscope to view it? He concluded that aliens from outer space must have done it. His interpretation of the ring was that the aliens intended to contact us and chose to do so by inscribing a ring and then discarding it in the desert east of El Paso, where it waited until appropriately insightful person found it. All we had to do now was translate the inscription, and much would be revealed. How satisfying is this explanation? Hopefully you have already identified several problems with Bob's interpretation, but this case allows us to consider the more general question of how we evaluate alternative explanations, hypotheses, in science. Hypotheses are evaluated by reference to criteria of adequacy, that is, a set of traits that indicate the explanation of naturalistic, viable, useful, etc. These criteria include such things as testability, productivity, can't pronounce that word, scope, and simplicity. Of the proposed explanation, Schick and Von, 1995, 200 to 211, the alien ring story provides a useful vehicle with which to consider the concept of simplicity. In science, the preference for simplicity is expressed in the principle of parsimony. This logical principle is also known as Occam's razor, named for the medieval philosopher William of Occam, with whom it associated because he often cited in his writings. William of Occam, circa 1285 to 1349, was born in Occam, or Ossum, England, studied at Oxford, and became a Franciscan theologian. Through his writings on philosophy, he can be viewed as the leader of the 13th century nominalists who contrasted the empirical nature of things with the conceptual nature of scientific ideas, i.e., the world of facts versus the world of explanations. It has been suggested on the basis of his contribution to his intellectual position that Occam was the pioneer of modern epistemology. Pfizer 2003-2. As used by Occam, the principle of parsimony states that plurality should not be persisted without necessity, or one should not increase beyond what is necessary the number of entities required to explain anything. Carroll 2002. In modern terms, we might say that the best explanation is the simplest, the one involving the fewest assumptions. So is Bob's explanation of the amazing ring in the desert simple or parsimonious? No, it is not. And for that reason, it's not very compelling or satisfying explanation. For Bob's explanation to be correct, a whole series of unsupported propositions must be true. First, we must accept the idea that there are, in fact, extraterrestrial aliens in the universe, and that such beings are sophisticated enough to find us. Of course, this is an assumption because the existence of aliens has yet to be demonstrated. We must also subscribe to the notion that these aliens are interested in contacting us, have the ability to do so, and have the benevolent intent of communicating with us. Assumptions again. It would seem just as likely that aliens, if they exist, would be here on a hunting trip or in search of natural resources, as in the movies Predator and Independence Day. Next, we would have to agree that aliens from a sophisticated civilization were not only capable of interstellar travel, but also actually succeeded in making a journey to Earth. And when they arrived here, they tried to communicate with us, not in their own language or the language of mathematics, but in a dead prehistoric human language. Furthermore, while they have technology beyond our own and manufacture metal alloys we have never seen, they chose to write the microscopic inscription on a toy ring made of cheap, soft metal of the sort we find in gumball machines, not meteorites. And we would have to agree that even though the aliens were here on Earth long or after enough to learn cuneiform and find a toy ring to engrave, they left no other evidence of their presence. Finally, they chose to place the amazing ring in the desert east of El Paso instead of at the White House, NORAD, Livermore Lab, or the Vatican. Each of these assumptions must be true for Bob's interpretation to be correct. If any of them are incorrect, the entire explanation falls apart. In other words, the extraterrestrial alien explanation is very weak. Can we think of a more parsimonious explanation for the ring? We certainly can. Imagine human child accompanying their family as they shoot off fireworks in the desert east of the town. Because of the ban on fireworks within the city limits, while playing, the child drops an inexpensive ring purchased from a gumball machine, and the ring is lost in the sands. The soft metal is easily scratched by wind-blown sand, and after some time it is re-exposed and discovered by Bob. It is just a lost toy ring, not a message from outer space. This is more parsimonious explanation because it is much simpler and doesn't require extraneous assumptions. It fits with what we know about the world works. Now, we can't say for sure that a child deposited the ring, be such an interpretation is certainly far more likely than Bob's explanation. It is more parsimonious. Being good scientists, we should consider other possible scenarios and test them further by studying things like the average size of children's fingers relative to the circumference of the ring, the depth of the scratches caused by windblown sand on a sample of soft metal, etc. Nevertheless, by applying Occam's razor, we have cut away or shaved off unnecessary assumptions Bob made, and as a result, we have identified a more fruitful avenue to a likely explanation. A similar reasoning process is appropriate when considering a proposition such as claims that evolution didn't happen, that it is a hoax being perpetrated by scientists from around the world, and that God created fossils of animals and plants that never existed, made them appear old, and placed them in sediments appearing to be old, all to test our faith. Clearly, science is not the only way to know about such things, but it often provides the most simplest and productive explanation of natural phenomena. It certainly yields the most testable explanations. This is the end of Chapter 3, Part 2.